What happens when I follow the rules exactly and hand over a critical project because they demanded my test server back? I was working remotely for a European-based manufacturer that specialized in high-end broadcast processing equipment. My division was focused on the most technically demanding part of the company niche products that required very careful configuration and constant testing. The developers in Europe were fantastic, and I had a great relationship with them. We could talk for hours about things that would make most people's eyes glaze over: IP ranges, capacitor values, firmware quirks. I loved it. The US office, on the other hand, was different. They mostly just took orders from headquarters and shipped things out. They had some solid basic technicians, but they weren't set up to handle the really high-end troubleshooting that I did. That was exactly why I existed. At the time, there was an acquisition coming up and auditors had started poking around. Suddenly, everyone had to submit inventories of computers, test gear, and anything that even looked like company property. Fine, whatever, I figured it was just one of those bureaucratic things. Now here's the crucial part. I was in the middle of a huge project with one of the largest US broadcasters. We had already landed them one of the biggest upgrade sales our division had ever made. And I was deep into testing new SNMP features fresh from the developer sandbox. These were small but critical functions, and if they broke something, we could knock entire networks offline. That wasn't an option. To run my tests, I had enlisted an older Supermicro server that I had lying around. It wasn't fancy, just a 1RU utility server that maybe cost $1,000 new. I had set it up to run some basic SNMP functions to make sure the new features wouldn't break anything before we pushed them live on more than 50 broadcast stations. Every morning I'd get a new revision, hammer on it for a while, then send feedback to my contact at the broadcaster by the end of my workday. It was simple, but it was niche work that nobody else in North America was doing. Then the auditors spotted my little server on the inventory list. To the US office, it was the end of the world. Why is there a server in the field? Who approved this? Why do you need so much test equipment? I tried to explain 3 times that this wasn't just some random piece of junk. It was actively being used for a time-sensitive, revenue-critical project. But no one knew what I was talking about. They didn't understand the technical side, and they didn't want to. Their decision: the server had to go back. Period. I asked, okay, but who's going to take over this project if I send it back? Who's going to test these features with the broadcaster? Silence. Nobody had an answer. But they didn't care. The only thing that mattered to them was checking the audit box. By the day I was supposed to box it up, I was feeling particularly snarky. So instead of quietly complying, I wrote a cheerful email. I copied all the techs, all the decision makers at the US office, plus my contact at the broadcaster and his boss. The email introduced everyone to each other, thanked the US office for taking over this critical project, and expressed how grateful I was that they would now be handling the time-sensitive test phase. Then, just to twist the knife, I sent them the tracking numbers for all the other equipment I had boxed up, everything except the server. About an hour later, I got a very strange email from one of the decision makers in the US office. He clearly didn't want to admit that nobody in the US office understood what this project was about. At the same time, he realized that this broadcaster was a huge account and that screwing it up could kill future sales, along with their bonuses. His email suggested very carefully that maybe I should get the team up to speed before shipping anything back. I just replied with the tracking numbers again and reminded him that I had raised this concern 3 times already. Within half an hour, my phone rang. It was the head tech at US headquarters, and he sounded panicked. He and his superior had just gotten a very pleasant call from my broadcaster's boss, who was thrilled that the whole US team would now be checking updates. The broadcaster thought this meant I'd be free to spend more time on site with them, and had big plans for future projects. The head tech stammered, who's actually doing this work now? I calmly repeated that I had brought this up 3 times, so clearly leadership had made an informed decision. Panic spread like wildfire through HQ. I fanned the flames by emailing the developers in Europe, instructing them to send all new code updates to the US Tech Team's group email instead of after all. They were now handling the testing. This triggered a flurry of calls between Europe and the US, with the head of development demanding to know who had been hired without his approval to take over this specialized role. By the time the UPS pickup was supposed to happen, suddenly nobody cared about getting that old Supermicro server back. The equipment audit stopped being the highest priority in the world. In fact, I never heard another word about the server again. Should I stay in this relationship if my partner ended things just 2 weeks after childbirth? I never thought my life would unravel this way. I am a 28-year-old man, and 2 weeks ago, I was holding my newborn child in my arms, believing I had a loving partner by my side. Today, I sit here feeling abandoned, blindsided, and unsure how to even begin making sense of what just happened. My partner, who is 30, went through an incredibly difficult birth. After hours of labor, the doctors decided a C-section was necessary. I remember standing in the hospital terrified, but also in awe of her strength. When our baby finally arrived, I thought we had crossed a mountain together. I thought we would face the next chapter as a team. For the first 2.5 weeks, I stayed home from work to care for her and the baby. And when I say care, I mean everything I possibly could do. I bathed both of them. I prepared food. I stayed up through the night rocking our newborn so she could rest. I encouraged her when she cried, held her hand when she felt overwhelmed, and told her daily how proud I was of her. I thought I was doing everything right. She even told me I was. She would smile through her exhaustion and say things like, "Thank you, you're amazing," or, "I don't know how I'd get through this without you." Those words gave me strength. Even though it was tough, I believed we were building something solid together. But then out of nowhere, she asked for space. It was a Sunday. She said she needed a break from me and decided to stay at her parents' house with the baby. I was confused but respected her request. I thought maybe the stress and hormones were overwhelming her. I told myself that if I gave her space, she would come back ready to lean on me again. The next 5 days were agony. I did not see her or our child once. I tried not to panic, reminding myself she just needed time. Then, on the 5th day, I was grabbing coffee with an older friend of mine, a man in his 50s who has always given me advice. I glanced at my phone before heading home, and there it was, a single text message from her. In that message, she ended our relationship. Just like that. No discussion. No explanation. She told me to respect her decision and give her space. After all we had been through, after the sleepless nights, after holding her hand in surgery, after caring for her and our child, she was done. I stared at the screen in shock. My hands shook. The barista asked if I wanted a lid for my coffee, and I could barely answer. My world had just collapsed in a matter of sentences. The part that breaks me the most is that up until that very morning, she had been sending me loving messages. Sweet words. Little affirmations. There was no warning, no gradual pulling away. One minute she was saying how much she appreciated me, and the next she was cutting me off. I keep asking myself, what did I miss? Was there something I did wrong? Was she hiding resentment all along? Or is this something deeper: postpartum depression, confusion, fear of commitment? I want to understand, but she refuses to talk. Friends tell me to give her time, that maybe she is overwhelmed and will come around. Others say I should prepare for the possibility that she truly wants to raise this child without me. That idea destroys me. I love my partner deeply, and I love my baby more than I ever thought possible. The thought of being pushed away from both is unbearable. I am torn between respecting her wishes and fighting for my place in my child's life. I do not want to force myself where I am not wanted, but I also cannot just walk away. I am the father and I want to be there every day, for every milestone, every laugh, every tear. At night I replay everything in my head. The long hours at the hospital. The way she clutched my hand during contractions. The nights we whispered about how we would raise our baby. How could all of that vanish with a single text? Maybe one day she will tell me the reason. Maybe I will never know. For now, all I can do is hold on to the hope that I can still be a good father, even if I am no longer a partner. But my heart is heavy, and I do not know how to heal from this sudden silent loss. So here I am, putting this into words because I feel like I am drowning. I never imagined the mother of my child would leave me without warning, especially so soon after our baby was born. I do not know if she needs space, if she is struggling with emotions she cannot explain, or if she truly no longer wants me in her life. All I know is that I love her and I love our baby, and right now that love feels like it is not enough. Am I overreacting for asking my wife to leave after I caught her putting something strange in my coffee? I am a 46-year-old man, and I need to admit that I am shaken to my core. For the past few weeks, I have been dealing with strange symptoms: dizziness, nausea, and trembling hands. At first, I blamed work stress, skipped meals, or maybe even the way I was sleeping. But then something happened that made everything click together, and I do not know if I will ever look at my wife the same way again. My wife is 49 years old. We have been married for 4 years and together for 7. She has always been kind to me. One of her small daily acts of love has been preparing my morning coffee. I never thought twice about it. It was one of those routines that felt comforting, the kind of thing that made me grateful to have her. But 2 days ago, I came home from work early and caught her in the kitchen. What I saw still makes my stomach twist. She was standing at the counter with my coffee mug in front of her. In her hand, she held a tiny glass vial. It had no label. I watched her tip a small amount of powder into my mug. It was not sugar. It was not creamer. It looked strange, fine, pale, almost like ground-up medicine. When she realized I was standing there, she flinched, quickly slipped the vial into her pocket and stammered, "It is just a new coffee mix I wanted you to try." Her voice shook and she would not look me in the eye. Later that evening, I asked her about it calmly. I did not want to accuse her of something without giving her a chance to explain. She told me it was a natural supplement that was supposed to help me feel better. I asked her why it came in an unmarked vial and why she had not told me about it beforehand. She avoided my questions. She insisted it was nothing harmful, but her evasiveness terrified me. Suddenly, all of my recent symptoms, dizziness, weakness, nausea, rushed back into my mind. What if this powder was the reason? I could not shake the fear. I told her that I needed space to think and asked her to stay at her mother's house for a few days. I tried to be respectful about it. She immediately burst into tears, telling me I was overreacting and betraying her trust. She said she was only trying to help me, but the truth is I felt unsafe in my own home. That night, I double-checked all the locks and kept the vial close by, too nervous to even test it myself. My heart raced every time I thought about what might be inside it. The next day I still felt ill. I decided to call emergency services. I explained everything I had seen and handed over the vial. The officers were polite but serious. Their expressions unsettled me even more. They did not dismiss me as paranoid. They took it seriously. Meanwhile, my symptoms worsened. My dizziness intensified, my stomach hurt, and my hands would not stop shaking. Doctors admitted me to the hospital for observation, ran blood tests, and told me that something in my blood work was unusual. They sent samples to a lab for further testing. could take days to get results. Now I am lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, and I cannot get rid of the image of my wife slipping that vial into her pocket. She keeps calling and texting me, sobbing, saying she is sorry, and that it was only a harmless herbal boost from a friend. She insists she never meant harm, but she still refuses to explain why she kept it secret, or why she avoided labeling it. Her messages are frantic, begging me to let her come back home. My chest tightens when I read them because I still love her deeply. She has been my partner, my everything. But how can I ignore the possibility that she might be the one hurting me? The doctors are monitoring me closely. They want to keep me here until the lab results return. The police have the vial and will test it as well. I do not know what to expect. Every time an officer or nurse walks into the room with a serious look, my pulse spikes. I am terrified of what they will say. I am equally terrified of what it means for my marriage if my wife knowingly put something harmful in my coffee. Part of me aches for her. She sounds desperate and heartbroken in her messages. I wonder if she truly believed she was helping me, if maybe she was naive and reckless rather than malicious. But then I remember how she avoided my questions, how she trembled when she was caught, and how my health has deteriorated these past weeks. If she genuinely wanted to help me, why not be open about it? Why sneak around with a vial that looks so suspicious? I feel betrayed, frightened, and utterly alone. Hospitals are not comforting places when you are lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments in your head. I never imagined I would doubt the person who has been closest to me. But right now, I cannot imagine letting her back into our home until I know the truth. Maybe never again. So here I am, writing this out, asking strangers on the internet for clarity. Am I overreacting for asking my wife to leave after I caught her slipping something strange into my coffee? I cannot shake the fear that I might have been poisoned, whether intentionally or recklessly, and that is not a fear any spouse should ever have to carry. Am I the asshole for calling my mother-in-law ill-mannered for going through my suitcase and criticizing my bikini? When I sat down to write this, I was supposed to be enjoying the first hours of my honeymoon. My husband had just left the hotel room to grab us some food, and I found myself scrolling, replaying last night in my mind. Everything was fine until that one moment with my mother-in-law. Now I keep wondering, did I overreact, or was I right to call her out? My husband and I have been together for about a year and a half. We got married just this past June, and we were so excited to finally head off on our honeymoon. The night before our flight, his parents came over to our place to say goodbye and wish us well. They live about half an hour away, so it felt nice that they wanted to come send us off. Everything was fine at first. We chatted, had some tea, and then my mother-in-law asked me if I had packed vitamins. I told her I would take care of it, but she insisted she could put them into my suitcase. That's where I should have drawn the line more firmly, but I thought it was harmless. I said thank you and eventually gave in, telling her she could put them in the inner zipper pocket. That was my mistake, because instead of just placing the vitamins inside, she unzipped the suitcase and started looking through my clothes. Buried inside was a bikini I had bought specifically for the honeymoon. It was a bit more revealing than what I normally wear, but I wanted something fun and romantic for this trip. She pulled it out, held it up, and asked if I was seriously planning on wearing something like this in public. I froze for a second, then felt my face get hot with embarrassment. I snapped. I told her, please don't go through our private things. That is rude and ill-mannered. Her eyes widened, and the atmosphere in the room instantly changed. She shot back that she was only trying to help and that I was the one being disrespectful. She also made a comment that a honeymoon does not mean I have to expose myself on public beaches. For context, we are Muslim and she is much more conservative than I am. At that point, I could feel my heart pounding. I told her clearly that my relationship with her son and the way I dress on our honeymoon is none of her business. That seemed to really offend her. She told me I lacked manners, and I could see she was deeply affronted. My husband stepped in and took her aside to talk. Later he told me he tried to explain that I felt violated, that even if she meant well, rifling through my suitcase crossed a boundary. But by then the mood had soured. His parents wished us a good trip and left soon after. Once they were gone, my husband admitted he thought I should not have let her near the suitcase in the first place. He said that while he agreed his mother was wrong, I also could have chosen my words more carefully. He believes I should not have reacted so quickly and harshly. He did speak to her about boundaries, but he wished I had paused before calling her ill-mannered. We both agreed not to let the situation affect our honeymoon. We changed the subject and tried to focus on our excitement for the trip. Still, when he left to grab food earlier today, I found myself replaying it all in my head. Was I wrong? Did I disrespect her? Or was I justified in protecting my own privacy? Here's where it gets even more complicated. Neither of us ever told our families that we were physically intimate before marriage. We kept that part of our relationship private. My own mother knows, but not my father. I do not believe his parents know either. So in her mind, I think my mother-in-law has an outdated and misplaced idea of who I am and what our marriage looks like. That is why the bikini seemed like such a shocking thing to her. She probably imagined we were both very reserved before marriage, and that our honeymoon should not involve revealing clothes. To me, her attitude is not only judgmental but intrusive. She crossed a line by going through the suitcase. And when I called her out, she tried to flip it back on me, saying I was the one with no manners. I have been thinking about what manners really means in this situation. In my view, manners are about respecting boundaries. You don't open someone else's luggage without permission. You don't criticize someone's personal clothing choices, especially when it involves intimacy between a married couple. That feels far more ill-mannered than me asking her to stop. And yet, part of me feels guilty because I know she may have genuinely thought she was being helpful. She probably did not think twice about digging through the suitcase once I said she could put the vitamins in. She might have believed she was doing me a favor. And maybe my words rude and ill-mannered sounded harsher than I intended in that heated moment. I love my husband and I want to have a good relationship with his parents, but I also do not want to feel walked over. If I stay quiet, I feel like I am allowing her to decide what is or is not appropriate in my own marriage. If I speak up, I risk sounding disrespectful. Feels like I cannot win. For now, my husband and I are trying to leave it behind us and enjoy our honeymoon. But I keep wondering what will happen the next time she pushes a boundary. Will he back me up fully? Will I need to choose my words more carefully? Or will she continue to see me as the one with bad manners because I dared to tell her no? So here I am on my honeymoon, asking strangers on the internet. Was I wrong to call my mother-in-law ill-mannered for going through my suitcase and criticizing my bikini? Or was I justified in standing my ground, even if it hurt her feelings? Am I the asshole for telling my son's girlfriend she could wear a wig even if he didn't like it? I am a 37-year-old white woman, and lately I have found myself stuck in a situation I never thought I would be in. My 14-year-old son recently started dating his very first girlfriend, a sweet 13-year-old African-American girl whom I will call Nina. From the moment I met her, I thought she was such a bright light, always smiling, bubbly, talkative, and with a spark that made everyone around her feel comfortable. She seemed like the kind of young girl who knew who she was and enjoyed being herself. But over the last couple of months, I noticed something shift. Whenever Nina came over, she seemed quieter, less confident, almost withdrawn. She stopped wearing the makeup and jewelry she used to love, and she wasn't wearing her wig anymore. At first, I didn't connect the dots. I thought maybe it was just teenage mood swings. But then I began to notice the change was consistent, not just a one-off bad day. One particular afternoon, I was driving both my son and Nina to a party. My son was still upstairs getting ready, so it was just me and Nina waiting in the living room. I glanced over at her, and she looked so uncomfortable, almost like she was dreading going to the party. I gently asked, "Hey, is everything okay? You seem a little down." She hesitated before answering, then quietly said, "I don't feel pretty." That broke my heart. I asked her why, and she admitted that she was still getting used to wearing her natural hair. That was when it clicked. I asked her, "Do you feel uncomfortable showing your natural hair?" She nodded. I followed up, "Then why do you do it if it makes you feel so uneasy?" Her answer floored me. She said, "Because your son thinks I look cooler this way." I was stunned. It hit me in that moment how much pressure young girls, especially girls of color, already face about their appearance. I remembered my own teenage years, doing silly things just to impress boys, whether it was dressing a certain way or changing my style to match theirs. I knew how easy it was to lose yourself when you're young and just want to be liked. So I told her honestly, "When I was your age, I used to do things just to impress boys too. But you know what? You don't have to. If wearing a wig makes you feel beautiful and confident, then wear it. Even if my son doesn't like it, you have the right to feel comfortable in your own skin." Her face softened for the first time that day. She smiled a little and whispered, "Thank you." I thought I had done the right thing, just offering some encouragement to a girl who clearly needed to hear it. But oh, was I wrong. A few days later, my son came storming into the kitchen. I had never seen him so furious. His cheeks were red, his fists clenched, and his voice shook with anger. "Why would you say that to Nina?" he yelled. "You're a white woman. You don't get to tell a black girl how she should look. You don't understand her hair, her culture, or anything about it. You're just being a Karen." I was completely blindsided. I had never even heard my son speak to me like that before. I just stood there, too shocked to respond, while he kept going. "You embarrassed me. You overstepped. You had no right to say anything." In my head I thought, but I was only trying to support her. She looked so unhappy, and I wanted her to feel confident. I didn't mean to insult him or Nina or her culture. I wasn't trying to make it about race. To me, it was about a girl feeling pressured by a boy's opinion and forgetting her own comfort. But the more I replayed his words, the more doubt crept in. Was he right? I am a white woman, and maybe I truly don't understand the nuances of what it means to be a black girl, wearing her natural hair versus a wig. Maybe there's a history, a weight that I can't fully grasp. I only wanted to be supportive, but what if my words came across as dismissive or ignorant instead? Now I feel torn. On one hand, I think, shouldn't every girl, regardless of her race, be reminded that she doesn't have to mold herself to what a boy wants? Shouldn't Nina know that her comfort matters? On the other hand, maybe it wasn't my place to say anything. Maybe my son was right, I overstepped a line I didn't even know existed. Since then, things have been awkward. My son barely speaks to me, and when he does, it's curt. Nina still smiles politely when she's around, but I can't tell if I made things worse for her too. I keep asking myself, am I the asshole for stepping in? Or was I just being a caring adult in a teenager's life who saw a girl struggling with her self-image? Should I have just stayed silent, even though I could see she was hurting? I don't know, but I've never felt so conflicted about a single sentence in my life. Is this entitled behavior when my client thought hiring me meant owning me? I never thought I would find myself in a situation where a professional contract turned into a battle for personal boundaries. I am 41 years old, and I work as a consultant in corporate strategy. Over the years, I have met many types of clients. Ambitious entrepreneurs, nervous managers, demanding CEOs. Some were respectful, others a little pushy, but I always prided myself on staying calm and professional. Unfortunately, one client crossed every possible line and reminded me just how entitled people can be when they believe money equals ownership. About 4 months ago, a CEO hired me to help restructure his company. At first glance, the project seemed like a great opportunity. The fee was solid, the timeline was manageable, and I knew I had the expertise to bring real value. What complicated matters was that I actually knew this man from years ago. We had gone to university together, and back then he had once made a pass at me. I turned him down firmly, and instead of moving on gracefully, he reacted the way many immature young men did at the time. He spread rumors that I was cold, unapproachable, even frigid. Those lies damaged my social life in college and cost me a few friendships. When I saw his name on the client list, part of me wanted to decline immediately. But then I reasoned with myself. It had been decades, surely he had grown up, and besides, business was business. I told myself I could handle it. From the very first week, however, the red flags appeared. He started sending late-night texts that had nothing to do with work. Instead of discussing strategy or deadlines, he would message me jokes about how I should be his work wife, or comments about how much more fun meetings were when I was in the room. At our project sessions, I caught lingering stares that made me uncomfortable. First, I brushed it off. Sadly, as a woman in the corporate world, I had become used to men in power treating boundaries as optional. I thought ignoring it would keep the focus on the job, but ignoring him only encouraged him. Very quickly, his entitlement became obvious. He behaved as if paying my consulting fee gave him rights over my entire life. He demanded my time on weekends, expected instant responses to late-night texts, and acted offended if I did not pick up his personal calls. When I politely asked him to keep communication during business hours, he acted like I was being ungrateful. One evening around 9:30, he texted me suggesting we go out to dinner alone to celebrate progress. I replied firmly that such requests were inappropriate and asked him not to contact me outside work. His reaction shocked me. He blew up, accusing me of being disloyal. He said he was giving me this opportunity and that I owed him my time. According to him, consultants like me should show gratitude by being available whenever he wanted. The situation escalated 2 weeks ago during a site visit. We were reviewing operations on the factory floor when he deliberately cornered me in a side office. He leaned in too close, invading my personal space, and made a disgusting comment about how he always knew I would eventually want him. My stomach turned. In that moment, I realized ignoring him would never make this stop. I shoved him away and told him never to speak to me that way again. Instead of backing off, he erupted in anger, shouting that I was sabotaging his company out of revenge for rejecting him years ago. His voice grew so loud that security came running. They physically escorted him away while staff stared at the scene in shock. After that, I terminated the contract early. I informed my firm and documented everything. The CEO's response? He is now threatening not to pay for the work I already completed. He claims I breached the contract, even though it was his behavior that made the situation intolerable. Thankfully, my firm is backing me legally and preparing to pursue the matter if he refuses payment. Still, the audacity leaves me speechless. He truly believes that because he once hired me, he owns me, my time, and even my body. It is a mix of entitlement, lingering lust, and an old college grudge rolled into one toxic package. Looking back, I wonder if I should have trusted my instincts from the beginning. I almost declined when I saw his name. Perhaps part of me thought giving him a chance would prove he had changed. But entitlement rarely changes. It only grows when power and money reinforce it. I learned that no project fee is worth sacrificing your dignity or your safety. What shocks me most is not just his behavior, but the absolute confidence with which he displayed it. He was certain that paying an invoice meant buying a person. He acted like boundaries were insults and professionalism was betrayal. In his mind, he was the victim the moment I refused to indulge him. I have seen entitled people before, but this combination of arrogance, disrespect, and vindictiveness still leaves me stunned. My story is a reminder that no matter how much we want to be professional, there are times when we must draw a line. Entitlement does not deserve silence. It deserves consequences. I am fortunate that my firm is standing with me, but many others in my position might not have that support. To them I say, your safety is more valuable than any paycheck. If someone treats you like they own you, it is not your job to endure it. It is your right to walk away. Was I wrong to spray a rude driver with my windshield washer when he kept blocking me? I still laugh when I think about this incident, even though it happened years ago. It was one of those moments that starts out incredibly frustrating but ends in a way that makes you feel like the universe handed you the perfect chance for a little harmless payback. To this day, I remember it vividly, almost like a short movie playing in my head whenever the memory resurfaces. It started on an ordinary day as I was driving northbound on a divided highway. The road had 2 lanes in each direction, and traffic was moving at its usual flow, typically 5 to 10 miles over the posted speed limit. I was planning to exit in a couple of miles so I could get onto the interstate heading east. Everything seemed normal, at least until I found myself stuck behind one particularly irritating driver. This guy was driving about 10 miles under the speed limit. Not just a little slow, painfully slow, especially considering the natural flow of traffic. You know the type. The kind of driver who somehow manages to turn a normal ride into an exercise in patience. First, I figured it was no big deal. I would just slide into the left lane, pass him quickly, and get back into the right lane before my exit. So I pulled into the passing lane, accelerated just a bit, and prepared to overtake him. That's when the game began. The moment I moved into the left lane, this driver suddenly sped up. It wasn't gradual. It was like he stomped on the gas the instant he saw me coming. I thought, okay, maybe he just realized he was going too slow. So I sped up a little more to keep ahead of him, but then he gunned it again, matching me almost step for step. I wasn't about to get a speeding ticket just to prove a point, so I backed off, moved back into the right lane, and tucked myself behind him again, keeping several car lengths between us. That's when things got worse. Almost as if on cue, he slowed down again. Now we were going even slower than before, closer to 12 miles under the limit. I couldn't believe it. Clearly, this guy wasn't just an oblivious driver. He was playing some sort of petty power game on the road. Determined to get around him, I tried again. I eased back into the left lane, accelerated, and attempted another pass. And just like clockwork, he slammed his foot on the gas again. This time, he accelerated so much that I would have had to drive at a truly reckless speed just to get past him. There was no winning against his childish antics. I let off the gas, dropped back once more, and that's when I noticed something that would give me the perfect idea. His driver's side window was completely rolled down, wide open. The man had his arm casually propped on the door like he was king of the highway, smugly dictating who could pass and who couldn't. That's when inspiration struck. I grinned as a mischievous little plan formed in my mind. If he wanted to play games, then I could play too. And this time I was going to win. On my third attempt, I pulled back into the left lane. He did his usual thing, speeding up just enough to trap me alongside him. Only this time, I hugged the stripe line as closely as I could while staying perfectly legal. I positioned my car right next to his open window. Then, with the biggest sense of giddy anticipation, I pulled the lever for my windshield washer. Spray after spray shot out from my car, arcing perfectly into his wide-open window. It was a direct hit. Water splattered all over his arm, his shirt, and most satisfyingly, across the side of his face. I even saw him shake his head like a soaked dog, clearly trying to get the liquid out of his ear. I held the lever down a little longer than necessary, just to be sure I gave him a proper shower. In that moment, it was pure childish joy. The look on his face was priceless, complete shock mixed with the realization that his little highway dominance game had just backfired spectacularly. The best part? He immediately let off the gas. No more speeding games, no more trying to block me. Instead, he slowed down, wiping his face with his hand while probably cursing under his breath. Meanwhile, I was laughing so hard that tears rolled down my cheeks. I gunned it forward, pulled ahead of him, and exited onto the interstate just a quarter-mile later. The timing was perfect. By the time he recovered, I was gone, merging smoothly onto my next route while still shaking with laughter. For miles afterward, I couldn't stop giggling. My cheeks hurt, my ribs ached, and I actually had to remind myself to keep my eyes on the road because the memory of his soaked, bewildered expression kept replaying in my head. It wasn't dangerous revenge, it wasn't destructive, just the perfect amount of harmless pettiness to teach him a little lesson about messing with strangers on the road. Every so often, I think back on that day and still chuckle. It was one of those rare, perfect payback moments that doesn't require escalation or drama. Just a little creativity, the right opportunity, and a windshield washer at the perfect angle. So what do you think? What should I do if my fiancé kissed my twin sister at our family reunion? I never thought I would be the one writing something like this, but here I am. My name is Sarah, I'm 28 years old, and I just got engaged to my longtime partner Daniel, who's 30. We were supposed to be celebrating love, family, and the start of a new chapter, but instead I feel like my whole world has been ripped apart. We are currently at my family's lake house for a week-long reunion. I had been looking forward to this for months. A break from work, wedding planning stress, and just the chance to catch up with all my aunts, uncles, and cousins. I imagined cozy evenings, shared meals, and laughter echoing across the water. But that's not what I got. On the second morning of our trip, my cousin Emily, who is 22, pulled me aside. She looked pale, nervous, like she didn't even want to speak. I thought maybe she needed advice about school or dating, but then she told me something that made my stomach drop. She said she had gone upstairs to grab some clothes from her room. As she walked down the hallway, she passed by one of the guest bedrooms. The door was slightly open, and inside she saw Daniel, my fiancé, and my twin sister, Anna. According to her, they were standing close, speaking quietly, and then she saw them share a quick kiss. First I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to accept it. My twin sister and I have always been extremely close. We're not identical, but we've been through everything together. And Daniel? He's always been the steady, reliable man in my life. Why would they ever cross such a line? But then the shock set in. A kiss is not something you can easily misinterpret. Emily swore she wasn't mistaken. She said she wished she hadn't seen it at all but couldn't keep it from me. I felt like the ground vanished under me. The rest of that day, I pretended to be sick. I told everyone I had back cramps and needed to rest. In truth, I locked myself in my room, shaking, my mind racing. I didn't want to make a scene in the middle of a family reunion, but I also couldn't unhear what my cousin told me. Do I believe her? Do I confront them? Do I wait until we go home? Every option felt unbearable. For 2 days, I avoided both Daniel and Anna. I watched them at dinner looking for signs. They acted normal, almost too normal. Meanwhile, Emily came back to check on me, and when I saw her genuine concern, I realized she wasn't lying. That was when I knew I couldn't hold it in anymore. So, I gathered the four of us, Daniel, my sister, Emily, and me in one room. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely speak, but I forced myself to lay everything out. I said, "Emily saw you two in the upstairs bedroom. She saw you kiss. I want to hear it from you." The room went dead silent. My sister's face went pale then red. Daniel tried to keep a straight face, but I could see the panic in his eyes. And then it happened. Anna burst into tears, apologizing over and over. She admitted it. Daniel stammered that it was a mistake. Just one kiss. Like that somehow made it better. I told them if it was truly just one kiss, then they should have nothing to hide. I demanded to see their phones. Daniel hesitated, which told me everything. I pushed harder. If he didn't let me look, we were done right then and there. Finally, he handed it over. My hands were trembling as I scrolled through his messages with Anna. What I saw made me sick. It wasn't just one kiss. It started with little flirty compliments from Anna, then escalated into late-night messages, suggestive comments, and subtle but undeniable emotional cheating. And then the final nail in the coffin, a text from Daniel that very morning, hours before Emily caught them, saying, "I know I should regret that, but I don't." I felt the blood rush to my head. My ears were ringing. I told Daniel to pack his things and leave. I told Anna I was disgusted and that she wasn't my sister anymore. I couldn't even look at them. Right now, I don't know what the future holds. I haven't officially ended the engagement yet, but I can't imagine going through with a wedding after this. How could I ever trust him again? And how could I ever forgive Anna, the person who's supposed to be my other half? The betrayal from Daniel cuts deep, but the betrayal from my sister feels like a knife to the heart. She was supposed to stand by my side as maid of honor, not stab me in the back. I keep asking myself questions that don't have answers. Was this going on longer than I know? Did they sleep together? Was everyone else in my family blind? Or did someone suspect something? I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm replaying every memory in my head, wondering what was real and what was fake. Emily told me she would stand by me no matter what, and that means more than I can say. At least I know not everyone in my family has betrayed me. But right now, I need space from both of them. I don't want to hear their excuses or apologies. I want to sit with my own pain and decide what my next step will be. Maybe I'll end the engagement for good. Maybe I'll go no contact with my sister. Maybe I'll need years of therapy to trust anyone again. But for now, all I can do is breathe and remind myself that their betrayal says more about who they are than about me. Because I deserve so much better. So Reddit, what should I do? Should I walk away from both my fiancé and my twin sister forever? Or is there any path forward after something like this? Today I messed up by cleaning old dog pee and ending up in the ER. I woke up this morning thinking it would be just another ordinary day. My to-do list was simple. Clean the bathroom, toss a load of laundry in, maybe play a few rounds of my favorite video game afterward. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated. Unfortunately, the universe had other plans, and by the end of the day, I would be sitting in the emergency room with my eyes burning, my nose stinging, and a nurse timing me as I flushed chemical residue out of my eyeballs. It all started when I noticed that my laundry basket looked a little yellow at the bottom. The basket itself is one of those tall plastic ones with holes along the sides for airflow. And usually I keep a heavy black trash bag inside to keep the smell of dirty clothes from spreading. But as I bent down for a closer look, I realized something horrific. My two sneaky little dogs had been using the basket as a secret bathroom. The faint stains weren't detergent or dirt. No, it was dry, concentrated dog urine that had soaked through the bag and collected at the bottom. Most people would have gagged, cursed, maybe carried the basket outside. Not me. My brain instantly went into sanitization mode. I thought, this needs to be sterilized right now. And I've got just the thing. That was the fatal mistake. Without pausing to think, I dragged the basket into the bathtub, reached under the sink, and grabbed the first powerful cleaner in sight. A jug of concentrated bleach. My logic was simple. Bleach kills everything. If it works on toilets and mold, surely it could erase a little pet mess. I poured a generous amount directly onto the urine. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. The liquid began fizzing and bubbling like a mad science experiment. My nostrils burned as an acrid smell hit me. That's when my middle school science class came screaming back into memory. Bleach plus ammonia equals chlorine gas. And what's dog urine mostly made of? Ammonia. I panicked. My eyes started watering, my throat tightened, and I knew I had seconds to react. I turned the faucet on full blast, trying to dilute the mess, and kicked the basket over so the mix would drain. Then I sprinted out of the bathroom to grab something to cover my face. By the time I wrapped a rag around my nose and mouth, it was too late. My eyes felt like they were on fire, my nose felt singed, and even the skin on my cheeks felt tight, as if I'd gotten a bad sunburn in seconds. First, I tried to tough it out. I took the basket outside, flung open every door and window in the apartment, and set fans running. Then I sat down at my computer to distract myself with a little gaming. I told myself, if I can focus enough to shoot cannons and hold fast, it can't be that bad. But within minutes, my tears blurred the screen, and every blink felt like sandpaper. The rational part of my brain finally won. I needed medical attention. At the ER, things escalated quickly. A nurse took one look at my swollen eyes and rushed me to triage. "You've got mild chemical burns," she said. "We need to flush your eyes immediately." She tried to lead me to the eye wash station in the bathroom, but guess what? There wasn't one. The hospital had recently been remodeled, and apparently, nobody had thought to reinstall eye wash stations on the ER floor. So began the great eye wash scavenger hunt of 2025. Another nurse escorted me upstairs to ICU. We searched one bathroom, then another. Still nothing. Finally, I suggested we check the cafeteria kitchen. Having worked in restaurants before, I knew kitchens always kept eye wash bottles near the dish area. Sure enough, the nurse returned with 2 small portable bottles. They were all the kitchen had, but they were better than nothing. Back in there, I spent 15 awkward minutes squeezing the bottles into my eyes while the nurse timed me. We made small talk to pass the timing with tears streaming down my face, her trying to keep me calm. Once that ordeal ended, another nurse examined my lungs and skin to make sure I hadn't inhaled enough gas to do lasting damage. Luckily, my nose was just a little crispy inside, but my airways were clear. Finally, the doctor came in. He prescribed a more thorough rinse with Morgan Lenses, strange little devices that sit directly on your eyeballs and hook up to 4 bags, flushing saline across the cornea. Imagine wearing contact lenses attached to tiny garden hoses. The numbing drops helped, but the sensation was still surreal. By the end of it, my eyes felt raw but cleaner. Now I'm home with a prescription for medicated eye drops every 3 hours for the next 10 days. My dogs are grounded from the laundry room indefinitely, and my jug of bleach has been banished to the highest shelf, far away from impulsive moments of sanitization. The moral? Never ever mix bleach with urine. Old urine is basically ammonia soup, and ammonia plus bleach equals a World War I trench weapon. I learned the hard way that even a tiny bathroom can become a gas chamber in seconds. So yeah, today I messed up royally by trying to clean dog pee the wrong way, and nearly blinded myself. At least I can laugh about it now through very sore, very watery eyes. I just need to get this off my chest. My coworker's wife thought I was having an affair because I helped with dinners. Several months ago, something happened that still lingers in my head, reshaping the way I view myself and how others might see me. I am a 25-year-old woman, and I work long hours at a demanding job. One of my coworkers, Matt, is 44, and he and his wife, Mary, both work for the same company but in different areas. Mary is in a higher-ranking position, while Matt and I often end up in the same department. Earlier this year, Mary had to return to her home country because her mother was gravely ill. That trip turned into an extended stay because after her mother's passing, she had to handle funeral arrangements and estate matters. Nobody knew how long she would be away, only that she would not be back quickly. Matt was suddenly left as the sole parent of their 3 children aged 4, 8, and 12. Overnight, he went from being part of a parenting team to carrying all the weight on his shoulders. On top of that, he works just as many hours as I do, sometimes 10 or more in a day. At first he managed, but it quickly became clear that dinner and grocery shopping were overwhelming him. Breakfast he could handle. Lunch was often provided through school, church groups, or day camps. But dinner, the nightly routine of shopping, cooking, and making sure the kids ate a decent meal, became his biggest challenge. I felt bad watching him struggle. Before the pandemic, I had worked for a catering company, and cooking in large batches has always been second nature to me. Even now, I usually cook a big pot of something and eat it for days. So I made him a practical offer. If he covered the cost of groceries and added a little extra for gas, I would handle the shopping and cook dinners for his family each week. That way, the kids would have a proper meal, and he would not have to stress every evening after work. First it went smoothly. I would drop off food, sometimes warm it up at their house, and then head home. Then something shifted. One evening, his 12-year-old asked if he could watch me cook. Soon he wanted to help, so I began teaching him simple kitchen basics: chopping vegetables, stirring a sauce, prepping ingredients. He enjoyed it, and eventually he took photos of our little cooking sessions and posted them online. Later, I even started taking him grocery shopping, showing him how to choose produce, and he became proud of packing lunches for the family. I thought it was wholesome, a small way to help a kid learn independence. But then Mary saw the photos. From her perspective, seeing me in her kitchen, smiling next to her husband, talking with her son, it must have painted the wrong picture. She messaged me privately on social media, accusing me of having an affair with Matt. I was stunned. First I felt angry, but I forced myself to stay calm. I asked her directly if Matt had ever cheated before. She said no. I asked if she had ever suspected him of being unfaithful. Again she said no. I pointed out how ridiculous it would be for him to parade an affair partner in front of his children, and allow those moments to be posted online. She admitted that made little sense. I even offered to let her look through my phone when she returned. At that point her tone shifted. She called me over video, and instead of yelling she broke down crying and apologized. She admitted she had been under enormous stress, grieving her mother and managing everything abroad. The suspicion had come from her fear and exhaustion rather than any real evidence. I told her it was fine, that I understood, and I promised I would not mention it to Matt. She thanked me, but ever since she returned to work, things have been painfully awkward. We see each other in the office, exchange polite words, but the air is heavy with what happened. I try to rationalize it by reminding myself she was grieving and vulnerable. Still, the accusation left me shaken. Since then, I have become hyper-aware of how I behave around colleagues and their families. I second-guess myself constantly. If I offer to help someone, will their partner misunderstand? If I agree to hang out outside of work, will their family think it is inappropriate? If I ask for help myself, will it look suspicious? I analyze even casual interactions, terrified that I will come across as someone who crosses boundaries. The truth is, I never wanted anything except to make things easier for Matt and his kids. I saw a father drowning in responsibility and thought I could ease the burden. Instead, my kindness was misread as something ugly. Now I live with paranoia about how others perceive me. It hurts to feel this way. I know I did not do anything wrong, but the experience taught me how fragile trust and appearances can be. One innocent act can be twisted into something it is not, and suddenly your reputation feels stained. I cannot talk about it with friends or coworkers because everyone I know is connected to the company. If I open my mouth, people would instantly recognize the family involved, and the rumors would spread. So I am here writing this out just to release it somewhere. I wish things had not turned out this way. I wish helping someone had not led to suspicion. And I wish I could go back to feeling comfortable simply offering kindness without worrying about how it will be perceived. For now, all I can do is keep my head down, do my job, and try not to overthink every word or action. But deep down, I know I will never see myself or the way others see me in quite the same light again. What happens when I follow the rules exactly and stop playing the harmless, lock your computer game? I have worked in computer security for a long time, and if there is one golden rule everyone in this industry knows, it is this: lock your computer when you walk away. Even if you are just an accountant or receptionist, leaving your workstation unlocked is a security violation. It seems harmless, but it can open the door to breaches, leaks, and chaos. About 10 years ago, my team and I had a fun way of reinforcing this rule. Instead of reporting every violation to security, which would lead to retraining, write-ups, and eventually disciplinary action, we had a little in-house game. If you left your computer unlocked, someone might jump in, open your chat client, and type something silly. It could be anything. Does anyone know the meaning of life? Or free donuts at my desk? Sometimes it was just a funny emoji or a nonsense email to your team distribution list. Everyone laughed, and most importantly, you remembered to lock your machine next time. It was harmless, good-natured fun, and it saved people from formal reprimands. We all knew it was really a kindness disguised as a prank. One day, a new guy joined our team. Fresh hire, maybe a little too confident, definitely a little arrogant. Within the first week, he left his computer wide open when he ran off to grab coffee. I greeted him, introduced myself, shook his hand, and casually said, "Hey, just so you know, you've got to lock your computer when you walk away. It's company policy, and you'll get written up if you keep leaving it open." He rolled his eyes. Yeah, that's stupid. Whatever. I even sent him the official documentation, thinking maybe he just didn't take it seriously, but no, made a point of shrugging it off. He even strutted away from his desk a few times without locking his machine, almost daring someone to touch it. For weeks, the whole team tried to warn him. Multiple reminders, gentle nudges, even jokes. But he was a complete jerk about it. He'd laugh in people's faces, say things like, "You're not my boss," and brush it all off. The problem was, he was slowly gaining access to more sensitive systems. Leaving his computer open was no longer just lazy, it was dangerous. So we decided enough was enough. He didn't want to play the fun game? Fine. We'd stop playing. One afternoon, I saw him heading toward the elevator. Perfect. He was going to be gone for at least a few minutes. I slipped into his chair, opened his email client, and typed out something silly. "Does anyone know if pineapple belongs on pizza?" Sent it to his team distribution list, chuckled, and stood up. As I walked away, he came back. He saw me, his eyes narrowed. "What were you doing at my computer?" I shrugged. "Whatever," I said, mimicking his earlier attitude, and walked off. Later that day, his manager approached me. "Hey, about that email from new guy. He's not happy. He says he didn't want to play that game, and is thinking about reporting you to security for impersonating him." I smiled politely. "No problem. If he doesn't want to play the game, then we won't. We'll follow standard procedure from now on." That was the turning point. I called my team together and spread the word. From this point forward, nobody touches his computer. No silly jokes. No friendly reminders. If you see his computer unlocked, you file a formal violation ticket. Standard procedure. Within 2 days, almost 50 tickets were logged against him. His desk was in a high-traffic area, right next to the elevators, the break room, and the bathrooms. Dozens of people walked past his workstation every hour, and every time someone saw his unlocked screen, they opened a ticket. By Monday morning, he was already in mandatory security retraining. From my desk across the floor, I could see him gesturing angrily at his manager, glaring in my direction, his face red with frustration. But I wasn't doing anything wrong, I had only filed 2 tickets myself. The rest came from others who were just doing their jobs. His manager came over later that day. "Hey, maybe you could ease up on the tickets? He's drowning in retraining." I shook my head. "Sorry, but if I don't report violations, I'm liable. Standard procedure." That Monday afternoon, his computer was locked. The very next day, though, I walked by and saw his email client wide open again. He wasn't even at his desk, he was getting coffee. I stopped and said casually, "Hey, you forgot to lock your computer again." He spun around, furious, and practically sprinted back to his desk, muttering curses under his breath. But the damage was already done. Half a dozen people had filed tickets in the 5 minutes he was gone. Here's where it got worse for him. The company's security policy had changed recently. Before, there was a 3-step process: retraining, then a write-up, then disciplinary action. Now it was much harsher. If you violated security policy after retraining, you skipped straight to disciplinary action. By the end of that week, he had racked up dozens of violations. He was forced into a meeting with his boss, the director, and the security team. Rumor later reached me that he was put on a formal performance improvement plan specifically for security compliance. And then just like that, he was gone. Within a week, his desk was empty. We never set out to ruin his career. Nobody wanted that. All we ever wanted was for him to follow the same rules the rest of us did. If he had just locked his computer like everyone else, nothing would have happened. But he wanted to be stubborn, dismissive, and arrogant in a field where security isn't optional. In the end, his refusal to play a harmless little game led him straight out the door. Should I stay in this relationship if my boyfriend lets his mom hijack our vacations? I am 25 years old, and I thought I was finally going on the dream trip I had been planning for months. My boyfriend Tom is 24, and we have been together for 3 years. Since the start of this year, we had been talking about our first big international trip together. France. Just the two of us. Wine museums, little cafes on cobblestone streets. I wanted this to be our time, the kind of trip where you grow closer, make memories, and maybe even talk about the future. At first, everything seemed perfect. We booked our hotel in January, circled the dates on the calendar, and spent weeks researching what neighborhoods to explore and what food to try. It felt like a milestone in our relationship. But then everything changed with one text message. Tom's mother asked me which hotel we had chosen. I did not think anything of it. I assumed she just wanted to know in case she and her husband ever traveled there one day. I even sent her the link, adding a cheerful note. Save it for your future trip. Her reply hit me like a punch. Booked for the same dates. I froze. Excuse me, what? She was serious. They had gone ahead and booked the exact same trip. Not just her, but the whole family. Tom's father, his siblings, everyone. They had all decided to join us without asking. I confronted Tom immediately. He looked just as confused as I felt. He swore he had not invited them. He later told me that they had made the bookings a few days before, and that the tickets and hotel were already non-refundable. He did not want to start a big fight with his family, so he suggested we just go along with it. And that is how my romantic European getaway turned into a family trip I never signed up for. The first few days in France were nothing like I had imagined. Instead of exploring the city hand in hand, Tom and I were constantly waiting for his family to get ready, adjusting our plans for their dietary restrictions, and sitting through long, awkward dinners. If we grabbed coffee alone, his mother would text, "You went without us?" The guilt trips were relentless. Tom got sick halfway through the trip, and I tried to be patient, but the pressure kept building. By the end of the week, I felt exhausted, not refreshed. Instead of bonding with my boyfriend, we were snapping at each other. Instead of laughing in front of the Eiffel Tower, I was sitting at a mediocre restaurant because his family preferred something simple. The breaking point came during our final dinner. We were barely holding it together, just trying to finish the meal and get through the last night. Out of nowhere, his mom smiled and said, "Let's all go to Portugal next summer." I remember locking eyes with Tom across the table. That glance said everything. Neither of us wanted this again. But neither of us said anything in that moment. We just smiled politely and changed the subject. Now back home, I feel a storm of emotions. I love Tom. He is kind, funny, and he makes me feel safe. We rarely fight. But this trip has left me anxious about the future. I cannot imagine going through another vacation like that. I cannot picture years of family trips where I never get time alone with him. The truth is, this was supposed to be our trip, and I feel robbed of that experience. I wanted mornings where we woke up late, wandered into a bakery, and got lost in the streets together. Instead, I got constant interruptions and the heavy presence of his mother, who clearly does not respect boundaries. What hurts most is that Tom did not stop it. I understand he did not plan this, but once it happened, he did not fight it either. He just shrugged and said we would talk to them later, but later never came. He let the whole trip go by without saying a word to them. Now his mother is already planning the next one, and I am stuck asking myself, will Tom ever stand up for us? Will he ever say no to her? I do not want to put him in a painful position, but I also need a partner who will set boundaries. I need someone who values our relationship enough to say, this is our time, this is our space. If he cannot do that, then what kind of future are we building? So here I am, torn between two versions of my relationship. In one version, Tom learns to speak up, and we can plan trips that are truly ours. In the other, every vacation is hijacked, every plan includes his mother, and I spend my life playing third wheel. And I do not know which version of Tom I am really with. Am I overreacting for leaving my wife after discovering she voted for Trump because she thinks he is funny? I am a 34-year-old man, and I never thought politics would be the thing that pushed my marriage to the breaking point. My wife Sarah is 32. We have been married for 7 years, together even longer. Until recently, I thought we were on the same page about the big things, values, morals, the way we see the world. But last week something happened that has left me reeling. And now I am seriously questioning if I even want to stay married. For context, I have been doing stand-up comedy for about 10 years. It has never been my career, but it is something I care deeply about. Comedy, to me, is more than just making people laugh. It is about truth-telling, observation, holding up a mirror to society. I perform at open mics, local clubs, small shows, anywhere I can get stage time. It is not glamorous, but it is a part of my identity. Sarah has always supported me in a practical sense. She helps me rehearse, gives feedback, and has sat through countless sets even though she does not really enjoy that world. On paper, she has been supportive. But there is one thing that has always stuck with me. She has never once laughed at my jokes. Not during practice, not during shows, not even at home when I try out material. If I ask her why, she shrugs and says, "It's not my kind of humor." I told myself it was fine. Not everyone has the same taste. But it gnawed at me quietly. I love making people laugh, yet the person I love most never laughed with me. I tried to bury that feeling because in every other way she was a good partner. Then last week everything changed. We were at home having a drink, just relaxing. Politics came up in conversation, and I made some sarcastic remark about how bad things have been. I jokingly asked her who she voted for in the last election. She hesitated for a second, then said, "Trump." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I asked why, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Because he's hilarious. The way he talks, the faces he makes, the chow sit just cracks me up." She did not mention policies, leadership, or anything serious. Just that she thinks he is funny. I cannot explain the feeling I had in that moment. It was like a punch to the gut. I have poured myself into comedy for a decade. I have spent nights agonizing over word choices, timing, and delivery, trying to craft material that could make her laugh. She never once even chuckled. But this man who thrives on cruelty and mockery is what she finds hilarious. My chest tightened and I could barely look at her. I tried to explain. I told her that humor is not just entertainment, it reflects values. Laughing at cruelty normalizes it. People cheering for that type of humor, in my mind, makes society meaner, harsher, less compassionate. I compared it to dark chapters in history where crowds cheered while leaders mocked or belittled others. She rolled her eyes and told me I was being ridiculous. Since then, I have not been able to shake the disgust. I moved into the guest room, and I am making arrangements to stay with my parents for a while. In my mind, I am already thinking about divorce lawyers. It feels dramatic to write that, but I cannot imagine continuing life with someone whose idea of humor is so fundamentally opposite mine. My friends tell me I am overreacting. They say, "Not everyone laughs at the same things." It doesn't mean she disrespects your comedy. They tell me I am being too sensitive, that humor is subjective. But it feels bigger than that to me. It is not just that she doesn't laugh at my jokes. It is that she never has, and now I know why her taste in humor leans towards something I consider toxic. Comedy for me is about connecting. It is about finding joy in shared experiences. For her, apparently, it is about watching someone ridicule others. I cannot reconcile those two worldviews. Every time I look at her, I think about how she sat through my sets all these years with a blank face, then laughed at Trump mocking disabled people, immigrants, and women. It makes my stomach turn. I keep asking myself if I am being too harsh. Maybe I am letting my ego as a comedian get in the way. Maybe I am projecting too much onto what is just humor for her. But deep down, I do not think so. Humor reveals what we value. If she genuinely thinks cruelty is hilarious, then what does that say about her? And what does it say about the marriage I thought we were building on shared values of kindness, respect, and love? The hardest part is that I still love her in many ways. She is the person I come home to, the one who knows my routines, the one who has held my hand through good times and bad. But this revelation has cracked something open inside me. I cannot unhear her words. I cannot stop replaying that moment in my head, her laughing at the chaos, while I sat there realizing the chasm between us. So here I am, sleeping in the guest room, wondering if I am about to blow up my marriage over humor. But to me, it is not just about jokes. It is about what laughter represents. I cannot imagine spending the rest of my life with someone who laughs at cruelty but never laughs with me. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am too sensitive. But my gut tells me this is the beginning of the end. Am I truly overreacting for thinking divorce is the only way forward after discovering what my wife finds funny? Am I the asshole for rejecting my wealthy younger brother's dinner invite? I am a 27-year-old man, and I have a confession to make about myself. I have always carried around a certain level of childish envy when it comes to my younger brother, who is now 23. He is one of those people who seems to have everything in life come easily, and sometimes being around him feels like standing in someone else's shadow with no light left for myself. Ever since we were kids, he seemed destined for success. He was one of the best athletes in the state, even though he did not pursue sports professionally. He excelled in school, pulling A's and the occasional B, without ever seeming to stress about it. On top of that, he is exceptionally good looking. He has thick hair, a winning smile, and that effortless charm that makes people gravitate toward him. In high school, he was always dating someone, and somehow he never left anyone hurt. He would break up with girls in a smooth and kind way, always leaving on good terms. He was surrounded by friends, and the community adored him. Teachers, coaches, and even neighbors would tell him he was going places. He never had to ask for attention. People naturally gave it to him. Now, at 23, he is living the adult life most people dream of. He started working when he was 16, saved diligently, and built himself into someone financially stable far earlier than most. He is financially literate, and through hard work, he has already bought a 2-story house. He lives there with his beautiful fiancée, and he is earning a 6-figure salary. He has managed to set himself up for success in a way that makes me both proud and painfully aware of my own shortcomings. Meanwhile, I feel like the opposite. I went to college, worked internships, and tried to follow the traditional path. I never had a girlfriend. I was never popular. I was never the guy people pointed to and said, "He is going places." I have always been more reserved, more awkward, and frankly more invisible. My grades were decent but not outstanding. I was never seen as extraordinary. I work hard, but I am still struggling financially, and my life outside of work feels almost non-existent. I live in a small, cheap apartment, and there are times I have struggled to even save money. It feels pathetic when I think about how my younger brother is thriving, while I am just trying to get by. I know deep down these are my personal issues, but they weigh on me, and I often find myself comparing my life to his in unhealthy ways. Yesterday, he called me out of the blue. He sounded cheerful as always, and told me he wanted to invite me out to dinner with him and his fiancée. He said he wanted to treat me to a nice evening at a prestigious restaurant in town. I froze. I could picture it so clearly, him walking in with his beautiful partner, confident and happy, and me tagging along like the awkward older brother who has nothing to show for himself. So I lied. I told him I was busy. He pressed a little, saying he really wanted me to come, but I gave him a firm no and hung up. The moment I put down the phone, I felt like garbage. I sat there in my apartment, staring at the walls, thinking about what I had just done. I rejected his kindness, his attempt to include me, simply because I could not handle my own feelings of inadequacy. It reminded me of Walter White from Breaking Bad, when he rejects the free treatment for cancer because of pride. Obviously, I am not on some path to crime or destruction, but I related to that stubborn, self-sabotaging pride. The truth is, I love my brother. I am proud of him. I would never want anything bad to happen to him, but being around him sometimes makes me feel so small, so insignificant, that I find myself pushing him away. I wanted to be the older brother who guided him through life, but instead I feel like I am the one who needs his guidance. That hurts my pride in ways I cannot even explain. I know he has probably faced hardships in his life. Nobody's life is perfect, not even his. But from the outside, it feels like every door has opened easily for him, while I have had to push and struggle for every little step. And still, he is the one standing tall while I am left feeling invisible. So I sit here now ashamed. I imagine him telling his fiancée about how his brother did not want to come. Maybe they shrugged it off, maybe they are disappointed, I do not know. All I know is that I pushed him away once again. And yet, I cannot shake this thought. What if I went? Would I have just sat there, feeling out of place? Would I have resented every minute of it, comparing myself to him while he smiled effortlessly? Or would I have enjoyed myself, if only I had let go of my pride? I am torn. On one hand, I know my actions came from a place of envy and insecurity. On the other hand, I did not want to put myself through the pain of feeling lesser for an entire evening. I thought I was protecting myself, but maybe I was just hurting both of us. So here I am, writing this, asking strangers. Am I the asshole for rejecting my younger brother's dinner invitation? Was I wrong to let my pride and envy control my actions? Or was it understandable that I could not handle being in that situation? Am I the asshole for rejecting my dad's attempts to stay in my life after he cheated on my mom and had another family? I am 18 years old, and my parents' marriage blew up last year when my dad's affair came to light. My mom discovered that he had been cheating on her with a woman from work, and to make it worse, the woman was pregnant. The moment mom found out, she ended their marriage and filed for divorce. Dad packed his things and moved in with the other woman. That alone was enough to shatter me. But what made things unbearable was that Dad immediately tried to pull me into this new reality. He wanted me to come over, meet her, spend weekends in their apartment as if everything was perfectly normal. But I couldn't. I didn't want to sit on a couch where they made their new life, pretending my family hadn't just been ripped apart. He insisted that he never meant for me to get hurt, but then explained that he had fallen out of love with Mom years ago. He said his plan was always to wait until I turned 18 and moved out before leaving. According to him, the affair was just his way of surviving the last few years of marriage. I remember looking him straight in the eye and saying, "Those are weak excuses." That's when he tried to turn it around on me, telling me I was too young to understand. Then he dropped another bomb. He said he only married Mom because she got pregnant with me, and because she didn't want more kids. Their sex life was awful. I could not believe he told me that. I'm his kid. I don't need to hear about how he resented Mom for only having me, or how their bedroom life was supposedly miserable. He shrugged and said, "Well, you're 17, old enough to know these things." I told him that if he really wanted to save our relationship, he'd need to undo the affair, undo the other baby, and undo the betrayal. He couldn't do that, so as far as I was concerned, there was nothing left between us. But he didn't stop. Every Friday without fail, he started showing up outside my school. He would wait in the parking lot, asking me to go to lunch with him to come meet the woman and the baby. After the baby was born, he actually showed up with her in his arms, trying to introduce me like I was supposed to suddenly feel brotherly love for a child born out of his betrayal. I walked past him, sent him a text saying, "I am not meeting them. You can't force me to be the big brother to your affair baby." A few months ago, the divorce was finalized. Not even 3 months later, Dad married the other woman. He invited me to the wedding, I didn't go. Shortly after, they announced she was pregnant again. Dad called me, his voice full of excitement, telling me, "We're officially a family now. You should come meet your siblings. We can all be happy together." That's when I finally said what had been boiling inside me. "You lost my respect when you cheated. You chose another woman and another family over us. I'm 18 now, and just like you were ready to leave Mom when I turned 18, I'm ready to leave you. Leave me alone." He looked so wounded, but I didn't care. I was done. He gave me a couple of weeks to come crawling back. I didn't. He kept sending messages begging me not to give up on him, but I ignored everyone. Then my grandmother called. She asked me why I was throwing my father away, and passing up the chance to know my siblings. She told me, even imperfect parents can still be important. Imagine how you'll feel in 30 years when he's gone, and you miss the chance to say goodbye. I told her as calmly as I could. His affair kids will never be my siblings. I already said goodbye to Dad the day he betrayed Mom. There's nothing left to salvage. She sighed and said, that's disappointing. You're being an immature 18-year-old. You'll regret this one day. Maybe she's right. Maybe I will regret it. But right now, I don't feel regret. I feel peace. For the first time since all of this began, I feel like I'm not letting him drag me into his new life. He made his choices and I've made mine. The part that stings the most is that he acts like I'm the one abandoning him, when the truth is he abandoned me and Mom long before I ever cut him off. He prioritized his desires, his affair, his new family. He didn't think about how his son would feel when the life he knew was destroyed. And now suddenly he wants me to forgive him, embrace his new family, and pretend it's all okay. No, I won't. So here I am wondering, am I the asshole for rejecting my dad's attempts to stay in my life? Or is he the one who should have thought about the consequences before shattering our family and expecting me to play along? Is this entitled behavior when a gym member tried to steal my reserved squat rack? I never expected that a simple morning workout would turn into a showdown over something as basic as following the rules. For the last 6 months, I have been going to my local Planet Fitness almost every day before work. I usually arrive around 7 in the morning when the gym is busy but not chaotic, and I use their equipment reservation system to make sure I get my time on the squat rack. The system is simple. You book a 30-minute slot through the app, and when you show up, the screen by the rack displays your name. It is an efficient way to keep things fair for everyone. Yesterday morning I walked in, scanned my membership card, and went straight to the squat rack I had reserved. Sure enough, my name was glowing on the screen. I started my warm-up stretches and began loading plates on the barbell when suddenly I heard an irritated voice behind me. A woman in full designer workout gear head to toe Loyalmon stormed over like she owned the place. "Excuse me," she barked. "I always use this rack at this time. I've been a member here for 3 years, so you'll have to move." I blinked in surprise. First I thought she was joking. Then I realized she was dead serious. I gestured toward the screen that clearly displayed my reservation. Calmly I said, "Actually, I booked this rack on the app. That's why my name is here." Her expression hardened. "I don't care about your app. I've been coming here longer than you. Everyone knows this is my rack at 7 in the morning. You need to respect seniority." It was almost comical. Seniority? This was a gym, not the military. I explained again that the entire point of the reservation system was to prevent conflicts like this. She cut me off and raised her voice, threatening to complain to management if I didn't move immediately. While she ranted, she even started trying to unrack the weights I had just loaded, as if she could physically push me out of the way. By this time, other gym members were staring. A couple of people paused their workouts, watching the scene unfold. I stood my ground, pointed again at the glowing screen with my name and said, "I reserved it. I'm using it. If you have an issue, feel free to talk to the staff." Then I calmly went back to my warm-up squats. Her frustration boiled over. She crossed her arms, stomped her foot like a child, and kept muttering about entitled millennials who think an app gives them power. Ironically, she was the one acting entitled, demanding everyone bend to her personal routine instead of following the same rules the rest of us used. Her voice got louder, and within minutes a manager walked over to de-escalate. The manager listened patiently, then pointed to the reservation screen just like I had. He explained slowly and clearly like he was talking to a kindergartner that the reservation system was created specifically to make things fair. Anyone could use it. It did not matter how many years someone had been a member. What mattered was whether they reserved the equipment. To everyone's amusement, the woman admitted she had never even downloaded the app. She expected the world to revolve around her habits simply because she had seniority in her own mind. Instead of apologizing, she doubled down. She threw her hands in the air, muttered something about how the gym had gone downhill, and stormed off toward the treadmills. I shrugged and continued my workout. Honestly, I was more amused than angry at this point. The irony is that by complaining so loudly and wasting so much time arguing with the staff, she lost her entire 30-minute workout window. By the time I finished my sets and wiped down the rack, she was still at the front desk, loudly demanding to speak to someone higher up. On my way out, I caught a glimpse of her red-faced, lecturing a poor employee who was clearly just trying to do their job. Other gym-goers rolled their eyes and shook their heads. One guy whispered to me, "That's the most cardio she's gotten all day," and I nearly laughed out loud. The whole incident left me shaking my head at how some people think rules apply to everyone except themselves. The reservation system exists so that people do not have to fight over equipment. Most of us appreciate it. Yet here was a woman who believed that showing up for 3 years gave her permanent ownership of a squat rack, regardless of what the gym actually implemented. She wasted her morning, embarrassed herself in front of the entire gym, and still did not get her way. Later that day, I told the story to a coworker who also goes to the same gym. They immediately knew who I was talking about and said she had a reputation for being difficult. Apparently, she has argued with staff about towels, locker assignments, even music volume. It made sense. Entitlement rarely shows up once. It is usually a pattern. For me, the takeaway was simple. Standing your ground politely but firmly is the best defense against entitled behavior. If I had given in, she would have believed her bullying worked, and she would have pulled the same stunt on the next person. Instead, the system worked as intended, the staff backed me up, and she only managed to waste her own time. In the end, I got a solid workout, while she left with nothing but frustration. And honestly, that felt like justice. Was I wrong to embarrass my boss after he falsely accused me of stealing store credit? Back in the early 2000s, I worked at CompUSA, which for those who might not remember, was one of the major retail stores for computer hardware, software, and accessories. I was the front-end manager, which meant I oversaw all the cashiers, front-end supervisors, and door security staff. It was a role that demanded patience, organization, and a thick skin, especially when dealing with upper management. At the time, my store had 4 key managers: Tim, the store manager; Jeff, the operations manager; Mike, the tech manager, who also happened to be my best friend and roommate; and myself. Jeff in particular had a knack for making my life miserable. He seemed to view me as an easy target during meetings, especially when it came to sales numbers. During one of our monthly manager meetings, Jeff raised the issue that I wasn't having my staff aggressively upsell the extras that CompUSA wanted, push things like replacement plans, store credit cards, training classes, in-home installation services, and AOL signups. He pointed out that our numbers weren't as high as corporate wanted, and he started making it sound like I was slacking off. I calmly explained that I was training my staff to focus on what made sense during each transaction. If a customer bought a laptop, of course we'd mention a replacement plan or an accessory. But there was no need to annoy someone buying a printer cartridge by pitching installation services or a credit card. My approach kept lines moving smoothly and customers happier. Mike backed me up since he'd held my position before me. But Jeff kept pressing, making me look bad, and the sales manager piled on too. Even though our numbers were slightly above target overall, they weren't satisfied. After being treated like a punching bag for a while, I finally said, "Fine, we'll do it your way." The next day, I instructed my staff to pitch every single upsell to every single customer. Didn't matter if someone was buying a single mouse or a $2,000 desktop, they got the whole list of offers. Want this mouse? Great, let me also tell you about replacement plans, AOL, training classes, and a credit card application. Some of these even required walking the customer to another terminal, which took an extra 3 to 5 minutes. By noon that day, checkout lines were crawling. Customers were frustrated, salespeople were annoyed because they had to babysit customers through signups, and the entire front end slowed to a painful crawl. Within a week, the same managers who scolded me were begging me to go back to my original system. That small victory tasted sweet. Months later, the store manager Tim introduced an incentive program. For every upsell AOL signups, credit card approvals, replacement plan staff would earn store credit in the form of Tim bucks, fake paper money with Tim's face on them. We already earned commission, but this was a bonus. I was naturally good at selling these, and because I spent a lot of time at the register, I quickly racked up more than $1,500 in store credit. I used that credit to buy myself a killer gaming setup, and life was good until Jeff struck again. One day, I got a call from Mike. Corporate security was in the store, and Jeff had accused me of stealing merchandise. Apparently, when Jeff saw how much I'd purchased in one go, he jumped to the conclusion that I was ringing items at $0 and pocketing them. Instead of asking me, he called corporate and accused me of theft. I rushed in, stunned, and met with corporate security in the cash office. They asked about all the big-ticket items I'd bought for $0. I explained that I had earned that much credit and used it to buy the items. They looked skeptical until I rolled over to my filing cabinet and pulled out my employee purchase folder. Every purchase had to have a copy of the receipt filed, and attached to each were the original Tim bucks I had redeemed. I handed over my meticulously documented file. They compared it to Tim's official ledger and, after about 20 minutes, came back to tell me everything checked out perfectly. I was cleared, but I was furious. Jeff had accused me of theft, damaged my reputation, and wasted everyone's time, all because of his personal vendetta. And then came the cherry on top. Corporate decided to take all the managers out for a nice lunch as a thank you while they were in town. I wasn't even scheduled to work yet, so Mike and I were excited for free food. That's when Jeff slithered up to me and said, "You can't go. You have to watch the store." That was the last straw. As the other managers gathered near the exit, I walked over to the display of top-selling PC games: World of Warcraft, Doom 3, Half-Life, Star Wars Galaxies. I scooped up as many as I could carry, marched right to the front doors, and tossed all the boxes into the vestibule. Everyone froze. Corporate, Tim, the managers, their jaws dropped. The security alarms didn't go off. I locked eyes with corporate security and said, "PC games over $50 are required to have anti-theft tags on them. I don't think any of those do." Then I walked away calmly while Mike tried not to fall over laughing. Corporate quickly realized Jeff had failed at his actual job, making sure items were properly tagged. They spent days auditing the store, uncovering more issues under Jeff's watch. Meanwhile, Jeff had to crawl on his hands and knees picking up the mess I had dumped in front of everyone. It wasn't just petty revenge, it was justice. Jeff tried to destroy my reputation, but instead, he destroyed his own. So, was I wrong to embarrass him in front of corporate, or did he have it coming? What should I do if my boyfriend called me selfish for needing him while I was grieving my mom's death? Hi Reddit, I really need some perspective because I feel torn apart. I'm 25 years old and I've been with my boyfriend, who's 27, for about 4 years. Until recently, I thought we had a strong, stable relationship. Sure, like any couple we had our little arguments, but nothing major. That was until last week, when something happened that makes me question everything about our future. It started with the worst phone call of my life. My brother called me to tell me that our mom had passed away. To give some background, I wasn't always close with her growing up. We fought a lot when I was a teenager, but in the past 5 years things had changed. We had reconnected, healed a lot of old wounds, and built a bond that meant the world to me. We would text throughout the week, and every Sunday I would go on long drives with her on speakerphone talking about anything and everything. She had become one of my best friends. My boyfriend knew this. He had even joined in on some of those Sunday drives and seen firsthand how close we had grown. So when my brother gave me the news, my first instinct was to call my boyfriend. I was sobbing, panicked, not knowing what to do, and I told him I needed him with me that night. At first he comforted me, but then his tone changed. He reminded me that he had already told me earlier in the week he had plans with his friends. Once a month they have a boys' night, where they hang out and drink together. He said he only gets to see them in person that one night, and that he didn't want to cancel. I was stunned. I said, "I just lost my mom. Please, I need you." He told me he understood but insisted they couldn't reschedule, since all of his friends have jobs and responsibilities. We went back and forth for a while. I finally gave in, but I begged him to at least leave early and come home by 11. He agreed. That night I was alone. I tried to distract myself, but all I could do was scroll through old texts with my mom and look at pictures, crying until I felt sick. When it was 10 p.m., I texted him to ask if he'd be heading back soon. He responded that I had said midnight, not 11. I corrected him, saying I wanted him back at 11, and he stopped replying. At midnight he came home. I asked why he didn't just leave when I asked why he ignored my texts, and that's when everything exploded. He accused me of being selfish. He said I was ruining his night with his friends, that one extra hour didn't matter, and that I would be fine since you didn't even grow up close to your mom anyway. That last sentence broke me. It wasn't true. Yes, we weren't close when I was younger, but that had changed years ago. I tried to explain how much her loss meant to me, how much I needed his support. He brushed it off, saying I shouldn't expect him to drop everything just because I was upset. Since then things have been tense. We've barely spoken, and when we do it feels cold. I've been replaying the fight over and over in my head, wondering if he's right, if I was being selfish. Part of me feels guilty for interfering with his one night a month with his friends, but the bigger part of me is heartbroken. Shouldn't my grief, especially on the very day my mom passed away, take priority? I keep thinking about the future. What if something worse happens? What if I get seriously ill or we have kids someday and tragedy strikes? Can I really depend on him to be there for me when I need him most? His reaction made me feel like I can't. At the same time, I don't want to lose him. After my mom's death, the idea of losing someone else so close to me feels unbearable. I love him, but now when I picture our future together, I see doubt, fear, and loneliness. I've talked to a couple of friends about this and they all said the same thing: he should have been there for me. They said if it had been them, they would have canceled everything to be with their partner. But when I bring this up to him, he doubles down, saying they don't understand our relationship, and that I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I feel trapped in this cycle of pain and guilt. On one hand, I know my grief is valid, and I shouldn't feel guilty for needing him. On the other hand, his words are stuck in my head, making me question if I really did overreact. The worst part is the silence between us now. We used to laugh together, share everything, but now we walk around each other like strangers. And every time I look at him, I feel a pang of anger, because I keep remembering the moment he chose his friends over me at my lowest point. I don't know where to go from here. Do I confront him again and risk another fight? Do I try to forgive and move on even though I feel so betrayed? Do I walk away from 4 years together because of one terrible night? Right now, all I know is that I feel more alone than ever. Losing my mom has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And the one person I thought I could rely on made me feel like my pain was an inconvenience. So Reddit, what do I do? Do I try to salvage this relationship with someone who wasn't there for me when I needed him the most? Or do I take this as a wake-up call and walk away? Today I messed up by pretending to be Darth Vader. This didn't happen today, it happened years ago when I was in primary school. But every time I think about it, I still cringe so hard that I want to crawl into a hole and disappear. It's one of those childhood embarrassments that clings to you forever, no matter how much time has passed. Back then I was in year 6, about 11 years old, and had just joined my school's cricket team. I was the only girl on the team, and I desperately wanted to fit in. The boys I played with weren't cruel or anything, but they had this rowdy joking culture. They teased each other constantly, pulled little pranks, and had a kind of boys' club energy that I never quite felt part of. At the time, I had a reputation for being a goody two-shoes. Teachers liked me, I always did my homework, and I followed the rules. But when you're 11, being well-behaved doesn't earn you respect. It earns you eye rolls. I wanted the boys to see me as funny and cool, not just the quiet girl who always raised her hand in class. One boy in particular, Jake, was the class clown. He had that effortless ability to make everyone laugh, whether it was a silly impression, a clever comeback, or just some goofy face he pulled at the perfect moment. He wasn't mean about it, he just had the kind of humor that drew people in. And I wanted his approval more than anyone else's. So, after one of our cricket games, I spotted an opportunity. The team had a big duffel bag filled with all our protective gear. Jake was sitting next to me, pulling off his pads and gloves while I peeked inside the bag. Among the helmets and shin guards, I saw something odd, a small piece of gear that looked kind of like a mask. To my 11-year-old brain, it was perfect. The shape fit right over the nose and mouth, and being a massive Star Wars fan, my imagination took off. Without hesitation, I pressed it against my face and did my best Darth Vader impression. "Luke, I am your father." I expected Jake to burst out laughing. I thought he'd see it as clever, maybe even witty. Instead, he froze. His expression wasn't amusement, it was a mix of shock, horror, and maybe a little disgust. Confused, I lowered the mask and asked, "What? What's wrong?" He tried to stifle a laugh, his lips twitching as he got up like he was about to tell the other boys. I grabbed his arm and insisted, "No, seriously, what's so funny? Tell me." Jake finally cracked a grin and pointed to the object in my hand. You know what that is, right?" I frowned. "Yeah, it's like a face guard or something." He shook his head, still chuckling. "Nope. That's the cup." Took me a few seconds. "The what?" "The box. The shield. The thing the boys wear down there." He gestured vaguely toward his lap. My stomach dropped. My brain replayed the moment in horrifying slow motion. I had just held against my nose and mouth the very piece of equipment designed to protect the boys' private parts. I shrieked, dropping it instantly like it had caught fire. My hands flailed in panic as I wiped them furiously on my shorts. "EW, why didn't you say something?" Jake was doubled over, laughing so hard he could barely speak. Through gasps, he managed to reassure me. "Relax. They're not allowed to wear it in their underwear. It's shared gear. But still, yeah, it's been close." That did not make me feel better. My cheeks burned the brightest red they'd ever been, and I felt this lump in my throat like I might cry. All I wanted in that moment was to vanish, to run away from the locker room and never come back. I grabbed my bag, avoided everyone's eyes, and bolted for my mom's car. The whole ride home, I prayed Jake wouldn't tell anyone else. Maybe if I was lucky, the story would die with him. The next morning at school, I walked into English class with my heart pounding. I scanned the room nervously, waiting for whispers or giggles or someone making a Darth Vader joke. But everything seemed normal. No one stared. No one smirked. Relief washed over me. Maybe Jake had kept it a secret. I sat down, opened my book, and started to breathe easier. Then I felt a presence leaning over my shoulder. A voice whispered in my ear, "Luke, I am your father." I froze. My face went hot all over again. Jake was snickering quietly, clearly amused by my horror. He didn't yell it across the classroom or announce it to the boys, she just planted that reminder, subtle and cruelly effective. I realized then that I would never escape this humiliation. For weeks, every time I saw him, I half expected him to make another reference. Sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't, but the possibility haunted me. Every time I walked onto the cricket field, every time I saw that duffel bag of gear, I cringed at the memory of my failed attempt at being funny. Looking back now, I can laugh at it kind of. It's the sort of story you tell years later when you're older, when the sting of embarrassment has dulled into something more like a comedy sketch. But in the moment, it was devastating. All I'd wanted was to be seen as funny and cool, and instead I wound up cementing myself as the kid who put a groin protector on her face and did a Darth Vader impression. Even today, whenever someone mentions cricket, Star Wars, or protective gear, I get flashbacks. It's my personal definition of secondhand embarrassment, except it's firsthand, and it's burned into my soul forever. I just need to get this off my chest. I'm tired of being seen as not manly enough. I never thought something as simple as how people perceive me could eat away at my confidence, but lately it has been crushing. I am a grown man, and yet when people look at me, they do not see someone attractive, desirable, or masculine. They see someone who is cute, friendly, kind, but never a man worth dating. It all came to a head recently during a conversation with a girl I know. We were talking casually, and out of nowhere she said something that hit me like a punch in the gut. She compared me to my friends and told me that, in her opinion, a man needs to look tough and manly to be attractive. Then she looked straight at me and added that I was not tough, I was cute. She did not mean it as a compliment. She meant it as a dismissal, as if cute meant unworthy. And the worst part is, it is not the first time I have heard something like this. Over and over again, people describe me as nice, calm, a good listener, someone safe to be around, but never someone they would consider a partner. It is exhausting. Every time I allow myself to think about dating, I feel crushed before I even begin. I try to brush it off, but the words stick. You're not manly enough. You're too nice. You're short. You're bald. These comments come not only from my own insecurities but from the mouths of others. It feels like no matter what I bring to the table, it will never be enough. I am friendly. I am thoughtful. I listen when people talk. I do not raise my voice. I try to be calm and steady. And yet, these are not qualities anyone seems to value in a partner. Instead, they are traits that put me in the friend zone forever. People want me around when they need someone to talk to, but not when they want someone to hold hands with, go on dates with, or dream of a future with. Deep down, I know that I am not unattractive. I know that somewhere, there are people who would value kindness, calmness, and steadiness. But in my daily life, it feels like I am constantly overlooked. My friends are described as tough or manly. People point out how broad their shoulders are, how strong they look, how confident they appear. And then they look at me and laugh softly, saying, "You're cute." That single word, delivered with the wrong tone, makes me feel small and invisible. This frustration is not about the girl who said it most recently. Honestly, I did not even have an interest in dating her. What hurt was not rejection from her specifically, but the reminder that this is how I am seen by almost everyone. I could have shrugged it off if it was just once, but it keeps happening, and each time it cuts deeper. It makes me question myself constantly. Am I doing something wrong? Do I need to change how I look, how I act, how I dress? Do I need to force myself into a mold that feels unnatural to me just to be seen as desirable? Should I start lifting weights not for my own health but just to appear intimidating? Should I pretend to be louder, rougher, more aggressive just to match the picture people have of what a real man should be? And yet, I know that even if I tried, I would not feel like myself. I do not want to be fake. I do not want to act like someone I am not. But it feels like the real me is not enough for the world around me. Every time I think about dating, I feel hopeless. I watch people pair up, see relationships bloom around me, and I wonder when, if ever, I will be viewed through the same lens. Will anyone ever look at me and see more than the nice guy? Will anyone ever find me attractive, not in a patronizing or dismissive way, but genuinely? There are moments when I try to convince myself that being kind, calm, and attentive is valuable, and that someday the right person will see that. But when the voices around me keep highlighting what I lack instead of what I have, it becomes hard to believe. I am tired of smiling through the comments, tired of being seen as less of a man because I do not fit into a stereotype of toughness, tired of carrying the weight of being overlooked again and again. I am not asking to be everyone's type. I know attraction is subjective, but I wish just once someone would see me as I am and think, that is exactly what I want. Right now, I am caught between hope and despair. Hope that someday I will find someone who values me, and despair that maybe I never will. I try to hold on to the belief that kindness matters, that gentleness is not weakness, and that being a good listener is not a flaw. But every time I am told I am not enough, the hope feels smaller. I know I am ranting. I know this is messy and emotional, but I needed to put it somewhere. I needed to get it off my chest, because holding it inside is unbearable. Maybe the world is not ready to see men like me as attractive, or maybe I just have not met the people who would. All I know is that I am exhausted from trying to prove my worth in a world that seems determined to see me as less. I want to believe that there is someone out there who will not only see me but value me. Until then, I carry on, tired and frustrated but still hoping.